Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling something, well, pretty fundamental. Love.
Absolutely. We all look for it, experience it, but what is it really?
Exactly. Is it just, luck, a feeling that comes and goes?
Or is it something more?
That's the question our source material, Ephraim's 7me.pdf asks. Is love actually an art?
An art, meaning something that takes skill, effort.
Precisely. We'll be digging into Fromm's ideas, but also touching on insights from thinkers like Paracelsus, uh, psychology, even mystical traditions. Think Rumi, Meister Eckhart.
Quite a mix. So what's the goal here?
Our mission, really, is to pull out the key insights about love, what it takes, the challenges, especially today, all geared towards helping you understand your own connections and growth.
Okay, sounds good. And that core idea, love as an art, it immediately challenges how we usually think about it, doesn't it?
It really does. We see it in films, hear it in songs. Finding the one, love just happening.
Yeah, like catching lightning in a bottle.
But Fromm says, wait a minute. What if it's not something you find? What if it's something you, well, learn, something you actively build?
It's like wanting to be a master painter, but never actually learning how to mix colors or hold a brush.
Exactly. Okay, let's dive into that. Love is an art. The text kicks off with a quote from Paracelsus. I'll try the pronunciation. Speer she bin mien his spear she sevmes.
Which means
He who knows nothing loves nothing. Powerful stuff.
it really is. It suggests right away that love isn't just random emotion. It's tied to understanding, knowledge.
So knowing someone or something is sort of a prerequisite for loving them.
That seems to be the implication. Paracelsus is kind of setting the stage for Fromm's main point. Love isn't arbitrary. Our ability to love is connected to how deeply we understand.
Which makes you question the whole finding the right person narrative.
Exactly. Is the main problem finding someone? Or is it something else?
And Fromm jumps right on that. He calls it the object versus ability problem.
Okay, break that down.
We usually think the hard part is finding the right object of our love, right? That perfect person out there.
Uh-huh. The search.
But Fromm asks, what if the real challenge isn't out there? What if it's in here, inside us?
Our own ability. Our capacity to love.
Yes. So maybe instead of endless searching, we should focus on becoming the kind of person who is capable of loving deeply.
That's a huge shift in focus, isn't it? From the external hunt to internal work.
Totally. We get so fixated on finding someone to love us or someone we deem worthy.
That we forget to cultivate the very qualities needed to sustain love, like kindness, patience, understanding.
The document then looks at how partner selection has changed. It contrasts, older systems like arranged marriages
Often based on social standing, family ties, practical things.
with our modern idea of romantic love. How has that shift impacted things?
Well, on one hand, romantic love gives us more individual choice, obviously. Freedom.
Which seems like a good thing.
It is, in many ways.
Yeah.
But Fromm suggests this freedom hasn't automatically led to a deeper understanding of love itself.
How so?
It might have actually made us focus even more intensely on the object, the person we desire.
So the focus shifts to the prize, maybe, rather than the process of loving.
Potentially. At the expense of really developing our own ability to connect meaningfully, whoever the person is.
That makes sense. And it connects to the next big theme, love in the age of the market.
Ooh, that sounds critical.
It is. The text argues our consumer culture really shapes how we see partners, almost like they're commodities, products with a market value.
Wow. Can you elaborate on that? Like, how does that actually play out?
Well, Fromm suggests we start evaluating people based on, currently desirable traits. What's popular?
Like physical attractiveness, social status, maybe even certain personality types that are in vogue?
Exactly. It's like we're unconsciously browsing a relationship catalog, looking for the best package we think we can get.
So finding love becomes transactional.
That's the implication. We fall for someone when we believe we found the best object available, given our own perceived market value.
Like buying the best product we can afford. That's a pretty cynical view, but you can kind of see echoes of it, can't you?
It makes you think, definitely. And this market approach, Fromm argues, leads us to devalue the actual learning of how to love.
How so?
Because society pushes us to gain skills for, say, career success, material gain. That's seen as practical.
Right, skills with tangible payoffs.
Whereas learning to love, well, that's seen as maybe a bit of a luxury. Something for the soul, perhaps, but not essential for making it.
Even though it might be the most essential thing for a fulfilling life.
Precisely. Which leads us to another profound point. Love as an answer to the problem of human existence.
The problem being.
Our fundamental separateness, loneliness, that feeling of being an individual, distinct from everyone else.
Ah, the existential isolation.
Yes. And the text says failing to bridge this gap, to find some form of union, can have severe consequences. It even mentions psychosis.
That's a very strong claim about how vital connection is.
It really underscores it. Fromm believes this drive to connect, to overcome separateness, is core to being human. Love is a primary way we try to achieve that union.
And the alternative, complete isolation, is psychologically dangerous.
The text then looks broadly at history and different cultures, showing all the ways people have tried to deal with this separation.
Like what?
Things like animal worship, creating art, devotion to a god, or even a broader love for all of humanity.
So it's a universal problem with diverse attempted solutions.
Exactly. It shows this isn't a new issue. But how do these historical attempts relate to Fromm's idea of learning to love?
Well, they all show this deep human yearning to connect, to belong, to overcome being alone, whether it's through spirituality, creativity, community. They're all paths towards unity. Fromm might argue, though, that while these offer connection, learning the art of interpersonal love tackles the root issue by developing our own capacity for deep, sustainable union with others.
Okay. And there's a distinction made between temporary, ecstatic kinds of union
Like intense emotional rushes, maybe peak experiences.
and union based on conformity, just fitting in with the group,
Right. One is a fleeting high. The other is about belonging through adherence to norms.
which does from favor, whereas fee is more authentic.
He seems wary of both as ultimate solutions. The ecstatic moments are temporary. And conformity. Well, that often comes at the cost of individuality. He later emphasizes genuine connection built on integrity.
And that ties into this slightly uncomfortable idea, the illusion of individuality through conformity.
Explain that.
The idea that we think we're being unique individuals, but actually we're mostly following societal scripts.
And our sense of uniqueness comes from superficial things.
Yeah, like choosing certain brands or identifying with a particular political group, minor variations that make us feel distinct while we're largely swimming with the current.
That's a challenging thought about modern identity. It could hinder real self-discovery and therefore deep connection.
So if overcoming separateness is so crucial, what are the pathways Fromm suggests? The text mentions equality first.
Equality, how does that fit in?
It draws on Kant, the idea that no person should be a means to another's end, and also socialist ideas about abolishing exploitation.
Okay, so equality as a foundation for respect and genuine connection.
Exactly. If there's exploitation or one person is just using another, true union isn't really possible. You need mutual respect for autonomy.
Makes sense. What other paths?
Creative activity is another one.
Like the artists connecting with their materials.
Yes, that sense of integration when you're creating something. Becoming one with the work, with the world, through that act.
Contrasted with.
Contrasted with, say, alienating modern work, where you might feel like just a tiny part of a big machine, disconnected from the final product, and maybe even yourself.
Right. So creative work fosters union, while alienated labor increases separateness.
Now, this leads to understanding what activity really means in the context of love. It's not just doing things.
Okay.
It distinguishes between external, goal-driven actions and a deeper inner activity, something rooted in freedom, independence, drawing on Spinoza.
Spinoza's actions versus passions.
Tell me more about that.
Well, passions are when we're driven by external forces or reactions we don't fully control. We might look active, but we're passive underneath. Actions, for Spinoza, stem from our own nature, from freedom and understanding.
So true activity in love is about our internal state, our way of being in the relationship.
Exactly. It's about relating from a place of inner freedom and choice, not just going through the motions or reacting out of compulsion or need. It's the how, not just the what.
And this inner activity leads to a really powerful idea, giving as the essence of love.
Giving, not receiving.
Right. The text flips it. Giving isn't seen as depletion, but as an expression of your own power, your vitality.
Experiencing your own aliveness through the act of giving.
Yes. That quote, giving is more joyous than receiving.
Mm.
It suggests giving flows from abundance, not sacrifice in a negative way.
So when you give your time, attention, care, yourself, you're affirming your own capacity, your own richness.
That's the idea. It's dynamic, life-affirming.
The text gives examples, right?
It does. The intimacy of sex as giving oneself. A mother giving nourishment and care.
natural examples of outpouring.
It also notes that people who feel powerless often struggle to love. There's a quote from Marx, something like, "You need love to get love in return."
Love as a power that generates love. You can't give from an empty place.
Exactly. It suggests love requires a certain inner strength, the capacity to give freely.
Okay, so giving is central. But what are the components of that loving act? The text outlines key elements.
Right. Care, responsibility, respect, and knowledge. Let's take them one by one. First, care.
Care seems obvious, but what's the nuance here?
It's about active concern. Not just a feeling, but actively looking after the loved one's life and growth. The mother-child bond is a prime example.
Attending to needs, fostering well-being. Got it. Next.
Responsibility. And importantly, it's presented as voluntary.
Not obligation or duty imposed from outside.
No. It's about being ready to respond to another's needs, expressed or unexpressed. The text uses Jonah resisting his task and Cain denying responsibility for Abel as counterexamples.
So it's a chosen responsiveness stemming from care and respect.
Respect is defined as seeing the other person as they are, in their uniqueness, not trying to mold them into what we want them to be.
Valuing their individuality, not using them for our own purposes.
And crucially, the text says respect requires knowledge. How do those link up?
You can't truly respect someone you don't understand. You need insight into their world, their feelings, their way of being. Otherwise, you're just respecting your idea of them or projecting onto them.
So knowledge is essential for genuine respect. Which brings us to the last element, knowledge itself.
And this isn't just intellectual knowledge, is it?
No, that's the key. While psychological understanding is a foundation, Fromm argues true knowledge comes from the act of loving.
An immersion, a connection that goes beyond just thinking about the person.
Yes, a passionate joining. It contrasts this with something like sadism,
which tries to know through power and control, a distorted, destructive impulse.
Exactly. True knowledge and love comes from union and empathy, not domination.
Okay, those four, care, responsibility, respect, knowledge, seem like pillars.
They really do. Now this connects to a tricky concept, self-love.
Tricky because it sounds like selfishness.
Precisely. But Fromm flips that too. He argues that what we often call selfishness is actually a lack of genuine self-love.
How does that work?
A truly selfish person, in his view, doesn't actually care for or respect their own true self. They might be driven by greed or vanity, but not genuine self-regard.
And this lack can be masked.
Yes, sometimes by excessive concern for others. The example given is the overprotective mother who seems selfless, but might have underlying hostility or be living through the child because she hasn't developed her own self.
So the outward selflessness can hide a lack of inner fulfillment and true self-care.
Right. He talks about neurotic selflessness, the kind that's often praised.
Like being a martyr, always putting yourself last.
Yeah, but he says this can actually be a symptom that hinders the ability to love properly, to enjoy life. It might mask a deep-seated self-centeredness or insecurity.
So genuine love for others requires, or maybe even starts with, genuine love and care for oneself.
That seems to be the foundation Fromm is laying. It challenges a lot of conventional ideas about virtue.
It really does. Okay, so after establishing these elements, the text moves into different types of love, right?
Yes. It starts with brotherly love.
Which is?
Love between equals.
Yep.
It embodies those four elements, care, responsibility, respect, knowledge, but extended broadly. It's the foundation of connection with all human beings.
Like a sense of shared humanity, empathy, solidarity.
Exactly. Not exclusive, but a fundamental attitude.
Okay. Then maternal love.
This is described as the unconditional love for the helpless. Its core is care and responsibility, aiming for the child's growth and eventual independence.
The nurturing, accepting love that helps someone grow strong enough to stand on their own.
Right. But ideally, it includes wanting the child to eventually separate and become their own person.
Interesting distinction. What about fatherly love?
This is presented more as conditional love, based on principles, expectations, obedience.
So more about guidance, teaching, setting standards. Authority and duty are mentioned.
Yes, it's the love that guides the child into the social order, you could say.
Okay, so we have brotherly, maternal, fatherly.
And then the idea of mature love, which isn't a separate category like the others, but more of an achievement.
In integration.
Yes. Mature love is described as synthesizing the maternal unconditional care and fatherly conditional guidance expectation principles within oneself.
So a mature person becomes their own loving mother and guiding father. able to nurture themselves and hold themselves accountable.
That's the concept. It's about internalizing both capacities. And this maturity allows for healthier love towards others.
And finally, self-love comes up again.
Yes, reinforcing that it's absolutely necessary. You need that foundation of self-acceptance and self-care to genuinely love others.
Yeah.
It underpins everything else.
It seems like a recurring crucial theme.
Definitely. Then the focus shifts specifically to erotic love.
Romantic love, passion.
Yes. Described as the craving for complete fusion with one other person. It's inherently exclusive, unlike brotherly love,
And potentially deceptive. Why deceptive?
because the intensity can be mistaken for depth, perhaps. And Fromm draws a sharp line between erotic love and mere sexual desire.
So you can have sexual desire without love.
Absolutely. He points out it can be driven by anxiety, loneliness, a desire to conquer, vanity, all sorts of things other than genuine love. Confusing the two is a common pitfall.
So intense attraction doesn't automatically equal love.
Not according to Fromm. And he stresses that for erotic love to be more than just fleeting intensity, it must also include brotherly love.
Meaning care, respect, knowledge applied to the specific partner.
Exactly. If that foundation isn't there, the fusion is temporary. Once the initial ecstatic feeling fades, you might end up feeling even more separate than before.
That makes sense. The excitement wears off, and if there's no deeper connection.
It collapses. He also mentions tenderness here, says it comes from that brotherly love aspect, not just from sublimated sexual instinct.
Interesting. Okay. And selfishness gets another look.
Yeah, it circles back to reinforce the earlier point. Selfishness stems from not caring for your true self.
Leading to that feeling of inner emptiness.
Right, which creates a constant need to take from others to try and fill the void.
Contrasted with the productive person.
Who finds joy in giving because they operate from a place of inner fullness and self-acceptance. Really brings home the importance of that self-love foundation.
It does. The discussion then moves into development, doesn't it? How these love types play out as we grow.
Yes, starting with the infant's narcissistic stage.
Where the world is just an extension of their needs. Satisfying or frustrating?
Pretty much. Then the gradual shift towards objectivity, starting to see others and oneself more realistically. Recognizing others have their own needs and centers.
A crucial developmental step for relating to others.
And it contrasts immature versus mature love principles, like I love because I am loved.
Versus
I'm loved because I love, or I need you because I love you.
compared to the more mature, I love you because I need you. Oh, wait, is that right? Let me check.
Good catch. Let's reread that bit. Okay, yes, immature. I love you because I need you. Mature. I need you because I love you.
Right. The need stems from the love, not the other way around. That's a subtle but huge difference. Love comes first in the mature version.
Absolutely. It really shows the journey from need-based attachment to active giving love.
Then the focus widens again, looking at how society shapes love.
Yeah, things like private property, inheritance, how they might influence, say, fatherly love towards the son who is most like him or most obedient.
Making love conditional on conforming or carrying on the legacy.
Potentially. And how patriarchal structures or hierarchies emphasize competition over the equality needed for brotherly love.
Even though, as the text notes, the mother figure often persists in religions and myths despite patriarchal dominance.
True. It also touches on how our concept of God evolves from maybe a tribal authority figure.
Towards something more abstract. Principles like justice, truth, love.
Exactly. And eventually, maybe even beyond personification altogether.
This societal lens is important. Love doesn't happen in a vacuum.
Definitely not. And this leads into a really interesting bit about logic, paradoxical logic.
Moving beyond simple either-or thinking, like Aristotelian logic.
Right. The text points out that Western logic, based on A cannot be not A, struggles with ultimate reality or deeper truths. It gives examples from Taoism, Vedanta.
Where paradox is embraced, like the idea that opposites can coexist or that reality is beyond dualities.
Yes. And how does this relate to love?
The paradox of love is stated as two beings become one and yet remain two.
That core paradox we touched on earlier. You maintain individuality while achieving union, like that dance metaphor you used.
Exactly. It defies simple logic but captures the experience.
And the text suggests that understanding ultimate truth, or God, isn't achieved just through intellect.
But through
Action. Through the experience of oneness. It mentions how Eastern traditions and Judaism often emphasize right living over just having the right beliefs.
So the path is experiential, practical, lived, not just theoretical.
That seems to be the point. And how might that apply to love between people?
Well, maybe deep understanding and love also comes more from being loving, acting with care and respect, being present.
Rather than just analyzing the relationship or the other person.
Perhaps embodying love leads to knowing love.
Okay, but achieving clarity is hard, isn't it?
Uh,
The text talks about objectivity and how narcissism gets in the way.
our tendency to see everything through the lens of me.
Right. It gives everyday examples how someone might misjudge time based on their own convenience, how parents see their children, marital misinterpretations, even nationalism.
All examples of how our subjective viewpoint can distort reality, especially the reality of others.
Makes you think about your own blind spots, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Those times you were sure you knew why someone did something.
And maybe you were completely off base because you were only seeing it from your perspective. Objectivity is an ideal, the text says, but some level of narcissistic distortion is common.
So, striving for objectivity is part of the art. Then comes rational faith.
Faith, but rational. Isn't that contradictory?
Not in Fromm's view. He presents it not as blind belief, but as a core part of rational thought itself.
How so?
Like in science, you need faith in reason. In the possibility of discovery, a hypothesis is a kind of faith.
Okay, a trust in the process or potential. How does it apply to relationships?
It's the trust you place in the core reliability and constancy of another person, their fundamental attitudes, their love. It's not certainty, but a reasoned belief.
And faith in oneself?
Crucial. Believing in the enduring core of your own personality. That's essential for identity, for making promises you intend to keep.
And broader faith.
Faith in others, in humanity's potential. Believing that a society based on equality, justice, love is possible, even if it's not fully realized yet. It requires faith because the evidence isn't all in.
A reasoned hope, grounded in understanding human potential.
Exactly. So after all this, we come back to the beginning. Love is an art.
And like any art, it requires practice, specific qualities.
Discipline, concentration, patience, and supreme concern.
Let's unpack those quickly. Discipline.
Not just sporadic effort, but integrating it into your whole life, being consistent, which, the text notes, is hard for many modern people used to less structure.
Concentration.
Being fully present, essential for any mastery, but difficult in our distraction-filled world. Really listening, really seeing the other person.
Patience.
Understanding that mastery, including mastery of loving, takes time. Resisting the modern urge for instant results, allowing growth in ourselves and others.
And supreme concern.
It means this art has to matter deeply to you. It needs to be a top priority to dedicate the necessary energy.
So these aren't just vague ideals, they're practical requirements for learning to love.
Right. And how do you start practicing? The text suggests it's often indirect.
Like learning woodworking skills helps you learn focus, which then applies elsewhere.
Exactly. Learning discipline or concentration in one area can build the muscles needed for love. It requires deep involvement. Your whole being becomes the instrument in this art.
Applying these principles, discipline, concentration, patience, in all aspects of life becomes the groundwork.
And a key part of this practice is sensitivity to oneself.
Being aware of your own feelings, thoughts, reactions.
Yes, but not in an obsessive analytical way. More like a relaxed alertness. Noticing when you're tired or sad or irritated without immediately rationalizing it away or distracting yourself.
Tuning into your inner state. Why is that so important for loving others?
Because if you're out of touch with yourself, how can you truly connect with someone else? How can you know what you're bringing to the relationship?
Makes sense. The text also notes this self-sensitivity is hard because we often don't have a clear model of healthy functioning. We normalize patterns we grew up with, even if they weren't ideal.
Right. Education, Fromm argues, should ideally transmit not just information, but a vision of what a fully developed, loving human can be. But he laments that genuinely spiritual or deeply human individuals are often devalued today.
A sobering thought. So where does this leave us? The path forward?
Well, Fromm acknowledges a fundamental conflict between the principles of love and the principles of, say, a capitalist society focused on competition and consumption.
An inherent tension.
Yes. He suggests it's possible for many to practice love within the current system, but the tension remains.
So for love to become truly widespread, a social reality, rather than just an individual pursuit.
Fundamental societal changes might be needed. Changes that prioritize our human capacity to love over purely economic goals or bureaucratic control.
Shifting priorities from production and consumption towards human connection and well-being.
Exactly. He argues that a genuine interest in love, seeing it as the rational answer to human existence, compels us to strive for a society where our social and loving nature is actually integrated into how we live together.
So talking about love isn't just preaching.
No, it's addressing a core human need. Analyzing love reveals its absence sometimes and the societal conditions that contribute to that absence. Believing in love's possibility as a social force.
Is a rational faith grounded in understanding our deepest human nature.
So let's try to wrap this up. Our deep dive into Fromm's work presents love not as some passive feeling,
But as an act of art, something requiring knowledge, consistent effort, discipline, concentration, patience, and real, genuine care.
and modern life, with its focus on the market, consumerism, can often get in the way, can obscure this path, or make it harder.
Right. Overcoming that fundamental separateness through love is this ongoing work. It means
Right.
understanding ourselves, understanding others more objectively, getting past our own biases.
And cultivating that rational faith and connection in ourselves and in others.
Which brings us to a final thought, really, for you listening.
Yeah, something to chew on. Consider how your own approach to love lines up with these ideas we've explored.
Think about it. What might change if you consciously applied more discipline or concentration or patience to your relationships? Not just romantic ones, but all of them.
How might that transform your connections? And looking bigger picture, what kind of societal shifts might actually help create a culture where this art of loving can truly flourish?